answering your questions and diving a little deeper. This is the Midweek Rewind.
All right. Well, hey, everybody. Welcome to the Midweek Rewind. My name is Matt, and we've got Pastor Brent with us today. Thank you so much for joining us. Again, whether you're watching live or later or listening later, we're grateful for some time with you. We've got a little bit of a different situation this week. So, Brent, we are a little peek behind the curtain here. We're actually pre-recording this week. So we're actually recording on Tuesday instead of going live on Thursday. So why don't you tell everybody what you will be doing on Thursday this week?
Well, Thursday, I will be loading up a U-Haul with my daughter and son-in-law's earthly possessions. And we're going to be driving them on Friday and Saturday to Orlando, Florida. And so we'll miss them a whole bunch, but they're on a big adventure and we're proud of them. Yeah, he's got a new job. So we're going to be traveling on Friday and Saturday, and I am packing up on Thursday. So we're in a bit of a time warp, recording the midweek thing on Tuesday.
I mean, it's still technically midweek, I suppose, but we're just,
it is.
We're not actually live. So our little intro, we actually gave a little announcement about the Midweek Rewind this Sunday, talked about answering your questions, and then not able to be live this week. But we still wanted to get a show in and have a chance to dive in a little bit deeper into the sermon. So Brent, thanks for calling an audible and going a little bit early this week. I think we still got a really good topic to talk about. So we're still in the Art-ish of Life series, wrapping up. I guess this Sunday is the last week in the series, but for those people watching who weren't able to join us on Sunday, why don't you give a quick recap of what we talked about this past Sunday?
Yeah, we talked about giving and receiving correction. I had 3 word suggestions and words of advice and correction, kind of on a scale of soft to a little harsh. But yeah, how do you give and receive that? We all make mistakes. And we all have other people who do stuff that offend us. And so to the end of our days, we're going to have opportunities to give that stuff and opportunities to receive it. And it's just a good thing if you do that well. We're going to spend some time, I think, today just diving a little deeper on how do you know if you should and what happens if it implodes. But we all live in this world, whether it's parents choosing whether or not to confront their kids 72 times every single day, or a coworker or a friend or a spouse or whatever. It's real life. And so we would do well as Christians to be a little prepared for how we can give correction well and how we can receive it well.
Yep. It was really good. I encourage you, if you're watching today or listening and you didn't catch the sermon, please go back and watch it. It was a great message. And I think, Brent, if we were to kind of sum it up a little bit, you talked about how sometimes we just don't need to confront because there's verses that say things like love covers a multitude of sin. And sometimes you just have to let love cover when you're hurt by someone. But then there are other verses that say that we should confront, but there's usually some kind of disclaimer like in wisdom or with love. And so that was kind of the gist. What were some of the other kind of main points that you brought up on Sunday?
Well, we were talking on the giving side, the classic 2 ears and 1 mouth, be quick to listen, slow to speak. And that when you give correction, and how many parents have done this, and I've done this, you react in the emotion and your voice raises and it escalates. And so when you give advice, this is all common sense stuff. Where when I say it, yeah, I know that. It's just we don't do what we know we should do. But the first thing is pause. Quick to listen, slow to speak, slow to become angry. A second one, I'm just looking back at my notes. The second one is watch out for careless words. And that really comes without pausing. A third one we talked about is choose your words carefully. Salt. That seasoned with salt. And so it's mostly common sense. Be self-aware. You're either a fight or flight person, generally. And it's interesting. go through, I do a lot of premarital counseling because I marry a lot of couples. And one of the questions I ask is, do you find it easier to confront your mom or your dad, your brother or your sister, that friend or that friend? And you could be a fight confrontation person, again, with love and kindness, but you could go into the confrontation, right, with your dad, because your environment or experience shows you that he's going to take it well.
Right.
You never confront your mom because she always blows up. Okay. And so you're typically a fight or flight person, and you need to be self-aware.
Yep.
Further, you've got the individuals where you're going to switch for that person because you know they are not going to take it well, or that person, you're not going to be that nervous because you know they're going to take it well. And then we looked at Paul, and one of his points of self-awareness, whether it was that way for everybody or just that way with the Corinthian church, we don't know. But he wrote that he was bold when away from them, but timid when he was face to face. And so I know we typically say, don't write your stuff in an email. Okay. Right. But back in that day, at least for that experience, Paul was acutely aware that when he was face to face with that church, he clutched, or he got angry, or he locked up, or the words, got garbled up. But you put a pen in his hand and put some miles between him and them, and he could script and that primed the pump for when he went. Okay. So he was self-aware and others aware in that particular situation. It's your best chance. Yep. So giving, it was those kinds of things. Pause, watch out for careless words, good tasting words, seasoned with salt, and be self-aware. That's when you give it. Now there's more than just those four, but those are the four I addressed on Sunday on giving.
Yep. That was really good. And the thing about Paul writing some things and saying some things in person, I thought that was really interesting, because I think most of us probably do. We don't do our best thinking in the moment. So it was just, I'm glad that you kind of pulled that out, because that was an interesting thing to talk about there. So Brent, I think this is one of those things where I'm glad this is the Midweek Rewind exists for topics like this, I think, because this is one of those things where, as I was listening to your sermon, it was a great sermon, and a lot of the verses that you pulled out were great verses that, like, they're encouraging and they're, it's truth. But
is there a but coming? Like, but?
Yeah, but it's real life is just not that easy. And you know that, like, there's all the verses that we've already mentioned about, you can confront, but be wise, or do it with love, or season with salt. Like, when you're listening to them, it sounds great. It's a great idea. But in practice, in real life, these things are just, it's probably among the hardest things about being a human, is knowing how to do this well. And so one thing that you breeze by, I'm gonna get you on the hook here, because you breezed past this on Sunday, but you said there's not really a formula of knowing when you should confront someone or when you just need to let it go. So that's what I want to dive into here is, how do you actually make that call? Like, if you're in a relationship with someone who maybe they're caught in some kind of sin, or maybe they've hurt you, or maybe, pick an issue, whatever is in your life. But how do you decide if it's something that you let love cover, or how do you decide if it's something you need to approach with wisdom and love? So I'm not going to let you get off the hook, Brent. How do we make those kinds of decisions?
Yeah, the internet didn't just stutter. I mean, I actually paused there.
Okay.
So no, we didn't lose the internet. So here's the first thing, and it's kind of a mind bender, Matt. One of the key things of deciding whether to confront or not is not them or the offense, it's your heart. And so there's a sense in which the first thing on the checklist, should I confront my daughter for the 37th time today? Should I confront that coworker who's always obnoxious? Should I confront my spouse? is not them and the offense and how bad it was, or what the ripple effect was, or the justice meter measurement, or whatever. It's actually your heart. And this is why it says, speak the truth with love, admonish one another with all wisdom, because there is a right way to do it. And the right way to give correction starts with your heart. So I was thinking about, if you just don't like someone because they irritate you, or you just don't like someone because of something they did from, last month or last year, and they do something, overwhelmingly, you're going to want to confront them as opposed to someone you really like. And so then the question is, am I really wanting to confront them because of the issue, or just because I don't like them?
Yeah.
That's a heart issue. In Matthew 7 or 5 or somewhere in the New Testament, it's in the Sermon on the Mount. Very interesting. Jesus said, take the log out of your own eye before you take the speck. That's a start with your own heart. By the way, I've always, this is for free, man. I've always found it interesting that Jesus said, take the log out of your own eye before you take the speck out of the other person's eye. Why didn't he say, take the speck out of your own eye before you take the log out of the other person's eye? Well, I think he could have said both. He was trying to just say, look inside. And so he said the log. But I'm telling you, as far as I'm concerned, a bunch of times when I'm trying to confront someone, they got the log and I got the speck.
Yep.
And I think objectively that's true sometimes. Their offense is much bigger than your offense.
Right.
And that's the reality. Sometimes you've got the log and they've got the speck. Either way, perhaps the first measurement of whether or not to confront someone isn't them or their sin. It's you and your heart. And I think, honestly, a whole bunch of times we just want to confront people we don't like. And if you stopped and said, okay, if my best friend did that same thing, would I have this same burn for justice? And so that's the first thing. Is just check your heart. Is your attitude right? Is your attitude good? In Galatians 6, it talks about the gentle spirit. If anyone considers himself to be something when he's nothing, he deceives himself. So you confront someone with a gentle spirit. Each person should examine his own work. Okay. So I think that'd be the first thing in deciding, but that doesn't solve the problem, because even if you come to a point of saying, okay, I think my heart's okay on this one. I'm not just amped up at a guy I don't like. I really do. I've looked inside the speck, the log, it's out. I think I got a good attitude. I breathed, I've listened. Okay, even if you check your heart, that doesn't solve it. You still need to know, should I, even with a good heart, confront? And that one's where it gets hard. Because, sometimes you make the decision purely on whether you think it's going to do any good. And we looked at, what was it? Proverbs 23:9, don't speak to a fool, for he will despise the inside of your words. And you can call that being afraid of conflict, or you can just call that life. Why would I spend a lot of emotional energy confronting someone who's not going to listen? And straight out of a Bible verse. So, check your heart. You got to make the calculated risk whether you think it's going to do any good. In the work environment, and this is where I fail, and you'll know this as one of the staff here on one of the people on staff here at the church.
This feels like a trap, Brent. Just going to say, this feels like a trap.
If everyone knows that such and such a person didn't do their job right, and I don't confront them,
Mm.
Everyone else is looking at me and everything goes dark.
Mm-hmm.
If they know that I've confronted staff X for what they didn't do right, that not only puts everyone else, on their edge of their chair and are sitting up straight and said, oh, wow, we better do our job right. Not in fear, but they say that. It also gives them confidence in me.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you need to confront one child because the other child saw what happened.
Mm-hmm.
The ripple effect's a little bigger.
Yeah.
Of course, if it's a huge issue,
Mm-hmm.
a huge offense, and it's public,
Mm-hmm.
that kind of raises the need to deal with it.
Mm-hmm.
If no one else knows about it and you don't confront them, the ripple effect isn't out there.
Yeah. Well, that was one of my questions for you is, do you feel like, I mean, I think the obvious answer is yes, but I'm wondering if you can give clarity beyond that. Your level of relationship with the person and how big or how deep the offense is. I mean, is that kind of a baseline to decide? I mean, because if it's a spec thing, usually we don't even bring up the specs because we disregard spec offenses all the time. Mm-hmm. So maybe that plays into the equation, or we probably shouldn't go around correcting people that we don't know. So, and would you say that those two things kind of play a part in this too?
Yeah, and if you're a flight person, it's not going to make that big of a difference. But I would say obviously, and that's what you just said. The answer is yes. If your relationship is stronger and or the offense is really big, it becomes easier to say, yes, I can and should confront. Mm-hmm. If your relationship isn't strong and or it's not a big thing, mm-hmm. then you probably shouldn't confront. Not worth it.
Right.
Or if you're a fool.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. There's this phrase, and I don't know if I mentioned it on Sunday. It's paralysis by analysis.
Yep. You didn't.
And we live in a world with so many choices. Mm-hmm. And we're going to get into that part of that in the next sermon series. Mm-hmm. But we live in a world with so many choices. People they just get paralyzed, paralysis by analysis on which TV show or which TV channel. Okay. Mm-hmm. To confront or not confront isn't a matter of number of choices, but it's uncertainty about which one you should do, because you can argue yourself. And so you get paralyzed by analysis. Yeah. And so in the end, God honors your heart. Mm-hmm. And I've told so many people over the years who don't know whether they should confront again person mm-hmm. X. Sorry.
Yeah.
They'll talk it through, but you land on one and then say this to your Father in heaven. God, I've been analyzing this and beating this dead horse, and I don't have a clear answer. I am choosing to not confront. Mm-hmm. And I just want you to know, even though you already know it, that that's what I've decided. And I pray that you would show mercy. I don't want to do the bad thing. I want to do the right thing. And if it's my fear that's keeping me from it, then deal with my fear. But this is what I'm doing. And please know that I'm trying to do the right thing. Mm-hmm. Any parent who has a kid say, I don't know which job I should take, but I just want you to know that I'm trying to respect you or I'm trying to honor you, they're good.
Right.
Everyone wants to know whether the heart, we talked about this last week, is facing them.
Right.
And so in the end, you just throw yourself at the mercy of your Savior and say, Lord, this is what I'm doing. I'm confronting. Mm-hmm. And I pray to God it's the right thing. And please, if it implodes or doesn't implode, I'm just wanting you to know my heart is right.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yep. That's good. Now, I think I'm probably a flight person. I don't like conflict. And so, I think one of the reasons why is I think a lot of people who have that tendency, they're afraid of what the conflict could lead to, right? They don't want to confront because they don't want to ruin a relationship, or they don't want an ongoing battle that'll never end, or, that's our minds kind of jump to those kind of things. So I'm guessing, Brent, this has happened to you where you did confront someone and it didn't go well. And you have to live with that, whether it's a person that you know, have a lot of ongoing relationships or, you know, face-to-face time with, or maybe not. I mean, I know people have been frustrated with decisions that our church has made, and I'm sure they've voiced them to you. So when, let's say you've done this, you've done your best to do it with humility and grace and love and wisdom, and let's just say it doesn't go well. What do we do on the other side of that?
Feel really bad. And that's a good thing. I didn't say shame or guilt, but when something implodes, and it's happened a fair amount for me, I've had people leave the church because of me and a decision I made or something I said, or I confronted them and they got mad and left. I think because I love, I just feel bad. There was a failure there, if not a moral failure. There was failure because the relationship was divided. There was hurt or anger. And so in a sense, if the relationship or the conversation, whatever, implodes, I think you should feel bad, at least a little, just for the failure of it all. Okay. If you're a people pleaser like I am, that can bleed into the lies of the devil, where he takes that and assaults me. You know, so it's one thing to just feel a Christian compassion of sadness when it went wrong, your confrontation. There's a line that gets crossed where it turns into shame or guilt or whatever it is, where the devil just beats you and you spiral down into self-doubt and insecurity and I'm a terrible leader and what did I do wrong, and you know, all kinds of darkness. So that's one thing to check. Genuine compassion, cross the line to shame and unnecessary shame and guilt, and we don't want to go there. So what happens? That happens. You feel bad. There are a few times that it's happened to me, and I do have I feel bad, but it honestly doesn't sting me too much because I have such confidence that I did the right thing. So a Bible example of that, I looked this up here. A Bible example of that is Matthew 15. And in Matthew 15 is Jesus, he quotes from the Old Testament. He says, they honor me with their lips, but their hearts are far from me. And he was talking about the Pharisees. He had just called them in verse 7, hypocrites. Isaiah prophesied correctly. You honor me with your lips and your hearts are far from. So he confronted, okay? And then he called the crowd to him because he was talking directly to the Pharisees. You hypocrites. Isaiah was talking about you. Honor me here. Your hearts are far from me. Then summoning the crowd, he said, listen, it's not what goes into the mouth that defiles man, but what comes out of the mouth. And it was from before and some of their rules. And so he looked at the crowd and he essentially hit them again, the hypocrites. The next verse. Then the disciples came up and told him, do you know that the Pharisees were offended when you said this? So he confronted them, and there are other times when the implosion is recorded. Here, it's not recorded, other than his disciples said, you know that didn't go well, right?
Yeah.
You confronted them, and it made things worse. They were offended and mad. And that's when Jesus said this very famous thing, leave them alone. They are blind guides. Don't follow them, he says. If the blind guide the blind, both fall into a pit. And so sometimes you confront someone and it implodes, you feel bad just because it's a failure. But it's not that you really did anything wrong.
Right.
Okay. That's assuming you didn't do anything wrong. Sometimes you confront them and you do something wrong and it implodes, but we're going with if you try to do everything right. But here, Jesus said, essentially, that relationship can't get healed. Just leave them be. Walk away. And that's an interesting discussion when a confrontation implodes. Sometimes you just walk away. Okay, we can't do anything. I don't know what else to do. There's a point at which you say, I can't do anything else. And if Jesus isn't saying that here, he's coming very close to saying that.
Yeah.
Just leave them be. Walk away. God himself can't convince them. They're blind guides. And so now there have been times when I've confronted and I rewind the tape and I know I said something wrong.
Yep. And I really like that you kind of wrapped up your sermon with the two proverbs about, the wise welcome instruction. I'll get this wrong, but something about the wise people, whoever loves discipline loves knowledge, but one who hates correction is stupid. The Bible actually calls them stupid. And then on the other side of that, don't speak to a fool, for he will despise your insight. And so, obviously most of us we want to put ourselves in the wise category, right? And so I hope I'm humble enough to want correction and invite that teaching from people. But kind of like what you were just saying, there's a person in my life who I feel like isn't correctable. And so I have to make those kind of decisions. Do I just let it go and try to live at peace? Probably the verse, I don't know, probably one of your favorite verses I've heard you quote many, many times. If it is possible, as far as it depends on you, live at peace with everyone. So I think at some point, there's nothing else you can do if you've tried to correct and it doesn't go well, especially if you have to keep that relationship going. I think, unfortunately, sometimes you just have to accept that it is what it is and do your best to live at peace and love them, even if it's a rough relationship.
Hey, if you, I haven't looked at the time, so we usually start at noon, and I know what. So you got to tell me how much time we got left, because we didn't start at noon.
Yeah, we got 3 minutes.
So one kind of interesting thought on confrontation, and it's a risk to say it the way I'm going to say it, but sometimes the golden rule doesn't work. So the golden rule is do to others as you would have them do to you. And some people, when someone confronts them, they don't get offended. That's who they are. Just tell me, I'll decide whether I like it. Just like some people are really irritated when you sit down and you say, hey, I really appreciate you and I respect you for this and this. And all they see is manipulation and schmooze because they know you're just saying some nice things. So then you can lower the boom on them.
Right.
And so do unto others as you would have them do unto you is a really good principle in a lot of ways. Be nice to them because you want them to be nice to you. Forgive them because you want them to forgive you. Serve them because you want them to serve you. So the golden rule is a great golden rule, but it's not the way we should always do conflict resolution and giving correction. So I have actually walked into a conversation, sat here in my office several times, and confronted someone like I wanted to be confronted. And it made things worse.
Yep.
Because I need someone to make one statement of loyalty and then hit me. And I'm fine with that. So I made one, hey, I appreciate who you are. You're a great servant. And then I told them what, and it made things so much worse. And so it is so hard to know how to confront because you don't always know how the other person wants it to be given. In a perfect world, you would not only be self-aware, but others aware.
Yep.
Yeah, it's
rough. And I think this has been a kind of a theme the past several weeks. This is just something that we're never going to 100% master this side of heaven. And so, Humility's come up a few times during this series, and I think just being intentional. I like your idea of just pausing and be slow to speak and quick to listen. And I think sometimes there's not an easy answer. You just got to do the best you can. I think that's probably where we're going to have to wrap today. There's not an easy answer, but there's some good tips along the way.
Yeah, and in a odd bunny trail, you only know what red is because you know what blue is.
Yep.
If everything were red, you wouldn't know it's red.
Mm-hmm.
You only know sweet because you know sour.
Right.
If everything were sweet, you wouldn't know it's sweet. And how really do you know if it's a good day except that you know what a bad day is? And how do you recognize happiness except that you know what sadness is? And so in a sense, we just say, okay, this is earth. And I recognize a tied up heart because God has also blessed me with a peaceful day.
Mm-hmm.
And someday we'll be in heaven. It'll all be wonderful. But until then, we got to live in a broken world, and we're not always going to know how to confront. And but such is life. And the hard days, well, we recognize them because we're also grateful for the really good days. And so we do our best, and we throw ourselves at the mercy of our Savior and say, God, relationships are where it's at, and I'm trying to do this thing right.
Yep.
And when I miss it, I'm already apologizing.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm really trying my best to confront well and to receive confrontation well, because everyone wins then.
Yep, that's right. All right. Well, yeah, last week was great. Again, I encourage you to watch if you missed the sermon, and we're getting ready to wrap up here. But very quickly, Brent, we're actually wrapping up the series this week, and I know you've got some special drawings. I think this would be cool to actually kind of demonstrate the salvation story that we want to share with friends who maybe don't know Jesus yet. So looking forward to that. And even though you're probably going to be social distancing on a beach somewhere, magic of technology will still have you with us on Sunday. So.
Yeah, I'll be here. I'll be here on Sunday via pre-recorded sermon. And I'm looking forward to when we do get back. It is a different life, doing it this way, but I'm glad for technology. I'm glad Matt, you and Eric are doing a super job at this online stuff. And we're grateful for the technology and the gifted people. So, but
is there a word of correction coming?
No.
Okay, good. Okay.
Just drop it there. We're all good. I'll throw some syrup on the pancake before I hit you hard, okay?
Good. All right. Well, yeah. So those of you watching or listening again, thank you for your time. Looking forward to having you with us again on Sunday, and hope you're hanging in there in coronavirus season. Just a few more weeks. We can get together soon. We're looking forward to that. So, Brent, have a great trip. Thanks for having some time with us today.
Thanks so much.
Yep. Thanks to all of you. See you next time.
Okay. Bye.
Thanks for joining us today. Matt and Pastor Brent go live on the First MB Church Facebook page every Thursday at noon. If you can't watch live, the archive is available anytime on Facebook, YouTube, or the First MB app. If you prefer to listen on the go, you can also subscribe to the podcast by searching for the Midweek Rewind in your favorite podcast provider. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time on the Midweek Rewind.